The room was glowing with soft golden lights, the kind that make everything feel warmer than it really is. Christmas music floated gently through the air, glasses clinked, people laughed, and the smell of pine and expensive perfume mixed together. It was one of those perfect-looking parties, the kind where everything seems peaceful, beautiful, and safe. I was standing near the edge of the room, holding a drink I hadn't even touched, half listening to conversations, half lost in my own thoughts. I wasn't fully part of the party, I was just present. Then I heard it, not loud, not dramatic, just a casual sentence. The kind of sentence people say when they think no one important is listening. She did an amazing job with the vacation house. The remodeling completely changed it. At first, my brain didn't register the words properly. Vacation house, remodeling, changed it. The sounds reached my ears, but my mind brushed them off like background noise. There are a lot of vacation houses in the world. A lot of remodeling stories. A lot of conversations that mean nothing to you, so I ignored it. I took a small step forward, trying to hear the music more clearly, trying to focus on the party again. But then another voice followed, quieter, almost amused. Yeah, her parents really went all out. New interiors, new layout, everything. My chest tightened. Her parents. My fingers slowly curled around the glass in my hand. My heartbeat changed, not faster, heavier, slower, like my body was preparing for something before my mind had fully understood it. I leaned slightly toward the voices without making it obvious. They didn't even wait for permission, someone said with a soft laugh. But honestly, it looks better now. That sentence landed differently. Didn't wait for permission. Something cold moved through my stomach. They were talking about my house, my vacation home, the one I bought, the one I paid for. I trusted my parents to look after, the one I never gave anyone permission to touch. Suddenly, the room felt louder and quieter at the same time. The music felt distant. The laughter felt fake. The lights felt too bright. My skin felt tight like the air had changed around me. I stayed still. I didn't turn around. I didn't react. I didn't interrupt. I just listened. They completely modernized it, another voice added. It barely looks like the same place anymore. Modernized it. Barely looks the same. My mind started racing backward, memories of the house as it was. The wooden floors, the old furniture, the calm feeling, the silence. The personal details I had chosen myself. The space that felt like mine, not just legally but emotionally. I had told them clearly. No changes without asking me. No renovations, no redesigning. No decisions without permission. That was the rule, that was the boundary. And now I was standing in a Christmas party, surrounded by lights and smiles, hearing strangers casually talk about how my home had been remodeled like it was a fun family project. My parents were across the room, laughing, smiling, relaxed, happy, too comfortable. They didn't look like people hiding something. They looked like people who believed they had done nothing wrong. I felt something shift inside me, not anger yet, not even sadness, just realization. A slow, heavy understanding that something important had been done behind my back, something I couldn't undo, something I hadn't agreed to, something that would change more than just a house. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a beautiful Christmas party, I knew one thing with absolute clarity: this wasn't just about remodeling. This was about betrayal. This was about boundaries. And this was the beginning of a story I never wanted to be part of. I forced myself to breathe normally and stay where I was. Whatever had just happened, whatever I had just heard, this was not the place to react. Not here, not now. I slowly lifted my eyes and looked around the room again, trying to see it the way I had only minutes earlier. The Christmas tree still stood tall in the corner, covered in ornaments and soft white lights. People were still laughing, exchanging gifts, clinking glasses. On the surface, nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I found my parents almost immediately. They were near the center of the room, surrounded by relatives and family friends. My mother was telling a story, her hands moving dramatically as everyone listened. My father stood beside her, smiling proudly, nodding along. They looked confident, relaxed, like people who had nothing to hide. That made it worse. I watched them more closely now. The way my mother laughed a little louder than usual. The way my father avoided looking in my direction just slightly. Small things, things I would have ignored before, but now every detail felt suspicious. I moved through the crowd slowly, pretending to greet people, pretending to be part of the celebration. Inside, my thoughts were spinning. How long ago had they done it? How much had they changed? Why hadn't they told me? And the question that hurt the most, why did they think they had the right? As I passed another group, I heard my name. Not directly, not loudly, just mentioned in passing. She's lucky her parents handled everything, someone said. Most people don't have that kind of support. Support. I almost laughed. I stopped near the food table, my back turned to the room, staring at plates I had no intention of touching. My reflection in the polished silver trays looked calm, composed. No one could see what was happening inside me. The anger still hadn't fully arrived. It was being held back by shock, by disbelief, by the strange feeling of being the last person to know something about my own life. I remembered trusting them, leaving the house in their care when I couldn't visit, telling myself it was safe because they were my parents, because they loved me, because they would never cross a line like that. Apparently, I was wrong. Across the room, my mother's eyes finally met mine. For a brief second, something flickered across her face. Not guilt, not fear. Something closer to surprise. Then it was gone, replaced by a warm smile and a small wave as if nothing was wrong. That moment confirmed everything. They knew. They knew exactly what they had done, and they had chosen this night, this crowded, festive, emotional night, to let the truth exist around me without ever telling me directly. I felt trapped. If I confronted them here, I would become the problem, the ungrateful child, the one who ruined Christmas. I could already hear the excuses forming in the air. So I made a decision. I stayed quiet. I smiled when people spoke to me. I nodded. I played my role. But inside, I was building a wall, brick by brick. Every laugh I forced, every conversation I pretended to enjoy made that wall stronger. By the time the party began to wind down, I had made another decision too. This conversation would happen, just not tonight. Tonight, I would leave with my dignity intact. And tomorrow, I would demand the truth. Because whatever they had done to my vacation home, I could already feel the damage spreading far beyond its walls. The drive home was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. The city lights passed by outside the window, blurred and distant, while my thoughts stayed painfully sharp. I replayed the overheard conversations again and again, trying to convince myself that I had misunderstood something. Maybe it was another house. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew I was. That vacation home had never been just a property to me. It was the first thing I had ever bought completely on my own. No help, no shortcuts, just years of work, saving, and sacrifice. It was the place I went when life felt too loud, when people felt too demanding, when I needed space to breathe without explaining myself to anyone. Every corner of that house carried intention. I chose the furniture slowly, carefully. I kept things simple, not because I couldn't afford more, but because simplicity made me feel free. The old wooden shelves weren't trendy, but they held books I loved. The faded couch wasn't stylish, but it was comfortable in a way that felt familiar. The house wasn't perfect, and that was exactly why it felt like mine. I had made one thing very clear from the beginning: no one was allowed to change anything without asking me first. Not because I didn't trust people, but because that house was my boundary in physical form. It was proof that I could own something without interference. My parents had agreed to that rule easily, almost too easily. They smiled, nodded, told me I was overthinking. Of course, they said, we understand. Apparently, they didn't. When I finally reached home, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I stood in the dark for a moment, keys still in my hand, feeling the weight of realization settle in my chest. The betrayal wasn't loud or explosive. It was quiet, heavy, the kind that sinks in slowly and stays there. I thought about all the times my parents had crossed smaller boundaries before, giving advice I hadn't asked for, making decisions for my own good, brushing off my concerns with a laugh. I had always told myself it came from love, that they meant well, that it wasn't worth fighting over. This time was different. This wasn't advice. This wasn't help. This was control. They hadn't asked because they didn't think they needed to. In their minds, they were still the decision makers. I was still the child, and my house, my property, was just another extension of their authority. That realization hurt more than the remodeling itself. I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the floor, imagining what the vacation house might look like now. The walls repainted. The layout changed. The personality erased. Strangers walking through it, admiring changes I never approved, calling it beautiful, calling it improved. Improved for who? By the time I lay down, sleep felt impossible. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives thanking me for coming, wishing me a Merry Christmas. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The holiday had lost its meaning in a matter of hours. I wasn't angry yet. I was hurt. And I knew that when the hurt finally turned into anger, the conversation waiting ahead would change everything. The next morning arrived too quickly. I hadn't slept much, but my mind felt painfully clear. There was no room left for doubt or excuses. Whatever had happened to the vacation house, I was going to hear it directly from the people who had done it. I went to see my parents later that day. The house smelled like coffee and leftovers from the night before, still carrying traces of Christmas. Everything looked normal, which somehow made it harder. They greeted me warmly as if nothing unusual had happened. My mother asked if I had enjoyed the party. My father commented on how nice it was to have everyone together. I sat down across from them and didn't waste time. I heard people talking last night, I said calmly. About the vacation house. There was a pause, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough. My mother's smile tightened. My father leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. No one asked what I meant. No one looked confused. That told me everything. What about it? My mother asked lightly. I took a breath. I heard it was remodeled. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then my father sighed as if I had brought up something inconvenient rather than serious. We were going to tell you, he said. That sentence hit harder than I expected. You were going to tell me. So it's true, I said. My mother nodded slowly. Yes, we made some changes, but don't react like this, she added quickly. We did it for you. For you, the words felt rehearsed. You didn't ask me, I said. My voice stayed steady, even though my hands were trembling slightly. You knew the rule. My father waved a hand dismissively. It wasn't a big deal. The house needed work. We just fixed what you didn't have time to handle. Fixed. Did you think maybe I wanted it the way it was? I asked. My mother frowned. You're being emotional. Anyone would agree it looks better now. Better, there it was, not a single apology, not even an acknowledgement that they had crossed a line, just justification layered on top of confidence. How much did you change? I asked. They exchanged a look, a silent conversation. Then my father answered, enough to improve it. That wasn't an answer. I stood up slowly. My chest felt tight, but my mind felt focused. I want to see it, I said. Today, my mother hesitated. You're overreacting. It's Christmas, let's not turn this into a fight. I looked at her and realized something painful. They still thought they were in control of this situation. They still thought they could decide when and how I reacted. I'm not fighting, I said quietly. I'm asking to see my house. The room felt heavier after that. My father finally nodded. Fine, he said, we'll go. As we walked out, I felt the last pieces of denial fall away. Whatever I was about to see, I already knew one thing for sure. They hadn't just remodeled my vacation home. They had remodeled our relationship too, and there was no going back to how it was before. The drive to the vacation house felt longer than usual. No one spoke. The road stretched ahead of us, quiet and familiar, but the silence inside the car was tense, heavy with things no one wanted to say out loud. I stared out the window, trying to prepare myself, trying to imagine what I was about to see. No matter how many scenarios I played in my head, none of them felt real yet. When we finally arrived, my stomach tightened. The outside looked different, not dramatically, but enough to make my chest sink. Fresh paint, new fixtures, small details that shouldn't have mattered but did. It was like seeing someone you love after they've changed something about themselves without telling you, something you can't quite explain, but you feel it immediately. My father unlocked the door and stepped inside first, like he was proud of what waited beyond it. The moment I walked in, the feeling hit me all at once. It didn't feel like my house anymore. The air smelled new, not familiar, not comforting. The furniture was different. The layout felt altered, even though I couldn't immediately point out how. Walls that once felt warm now looked sterile. Personal touches were gone, replaced with things that looked expensive, modern, and completely empty. This is the living area now, my mother said, gesturing around as if she were giving a tour. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I walked slowly from room to room, each step heavier than the last. The old couch was gone. The bookshelf I loved gone, the artwork I had chosen myself replaced with something generic and forgettable. Even the bedroom felt wrong. The bed was bigger, newer, colder. The curtains I used to wake up to were replaced with thick, dark ones that blocked the light. It was beautiful. And I hated it because it wasn't mine. This looks so much better, doesn't it? My mother asked, watching my face carefully. I turned to her. You erased it, I said quietly. She looked confused. Erased what? My space, I replied. My choices, everything that made this place feel like home. My father stepped in. You're focusing on the wrong things. We increased the value of the property. Anyone would appreciate that. Value. That word echoed in my head. They saw numbers. They saw appearance. They saw improvement. I saw loss. I walked into the kitchen and opened cabinets without thinking. Everything inside was reorganized. My things were gone, replaced by items I had never bought. It felt invasive, like someone had gone through my life and rearranged it without asking. Where are my things? I asked. My mother hesitated. We put some of them in storage. Others didn't really fit the new look. Didn't fit. I felt something snap inside me then, not loud, not explosive, but final. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't help. This was a decision made without me, about me, as if I didn't matter. I stood there, surrounded by walls that no longer recognized me, and realized something painful and clear. They hadn't just crossed a boundary, they had completely ignored it. And for the first time, I understood that if I didn't draw a hard line now, this would never stop. We left the house without saying much. There was nothing left to explain, nothing left to point out. Every room had already said enough. The drive back felt different from the one before, heavier, final. I wasn't trying to understand anymore, I understood perfectly. What I was feeling now wasn't shock or confusion, it was grief. That house was gone, not physically. It was still standing, still solid, still valuable according to everyone else. But the version of it that belonged to me, the quiet mornings, the familiar corners, the sense of control had been stripped away. And the worst part was realizing that the people who did it believed they were right. Back at my parents' place, the tension finally broke. "You're acting like we destroyed something," my father said, irritation slipping into his voice. "We made it better." I looked at him, really looked at him. "You made it better for yourselves," I replied. "Not for me." My mother shook her head. "You're being unfair. We spent time, effort, money. We thought you'd be thankful." That word again. Thankful. For what? I asked quietly. For being ignored, for having my decisions erased. They both went silent, but not in the way I hoped. Not reflective, not regretful. It was the silence of people who felt misunderstood, not wrong. "You're overreacting," my father finally said. "It's just a house." That sentence hurt more than anything else they had said. Just a house. To them, it was an asset, a project, something to improve, show off, control. To me, it had been a line, a clear one. A line they had stepped over without hesitation. "It's not just a house," I said. "It's my house, and you knew what it meant to me." My mother's voice softened, but not enough. "We're your parents, we only wanted what's best." And there it was, the justification that had followed me my entire life. "We know better, we mean well, trust us." But trust only works when it goes both ways. I stood up, feeling surprisingly calm. The anger I had expected never fully arrived. Instead, there was clarity. Sharp, steady, undeniable. "You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore," I said. "And you definitely don't get to make choices about my life without asking." My father scoffed. "So what now, are you going to punish us?" "No," I said, "I'm going to protect myself." That seemed to confuse them more than yelling ever could. I told them I needed space. Not just physical space, but distance to think, to process, to decide what came next. I didn't wait for permission this time. I didn't ask for understanding, I simply left. That night, alone in my apartment, the emotions finally caught up with me. I sat on the couch in the dark, replaying everything, not just the house, but years of small moments I had ignored. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern. And patterns don't change unless something breaks them. I opened my phone and started looking through old photos of the vacation house. The way it used to look, the way it used to feel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt the weight of letting something go, not the house itself, but the version of trust I thought we shared. I knew one thing for certain. This story wasn't over yet. The hardest part was still coming. I didn't talk to my parents for a few days after that. The silence wasn't planned, it just happened naturally, like my mind finally needed room to breathe. During that time, I started noticing how much this situation was spilling into the rest of my life. I couldn't focus properly. Small things irritated me. Even sleep felt restless, as if my body was still on guard. Then the messages started, first from relatives. I heard there was some misunderstanding. "Your parents were only trying to help. You should be grateful they invested so much." Each message felt like a small push, nudging me toward guilt, toward silence, toward pretending everything was fine again. I realized how quickly stories change once they leave your mouth. By the time it reached others, I wasn't someone whose boundaries had been crossed. I was someone who was making a big deal out of nothing. Family group chats became uncomfortable. Opinions flew freely. Some people defended my parents passionately. Others stayed neutral but advised peace. Very few asked how I felt. That hurt more than I expected. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was too strict. Maybe I should have expected this. Maybe this was just how families worked. But every time I thought about walking back my feelings, I remembered standing in that house, surrounded by choices I never made. That memory grounded me. One evening, I met a close friend for coffee. I hadn't planned to talk about everything, but once I started, the words spilled out easily. I told them about the party, the overheard conversation, the confrontation, the house. When I finished, I waited for the familiar response. Instead, they said, "You're not wrong." Those three words felt like relief. "They didn't just remodel your house," my friend continued. "They ignored your consent. That's not love, that's control." Hearing it out loud changed something in me. It gave shape to what I had been feeling but couldn't fully name. I wasn't being dramatic, I wasn't ungrateful, I was reacting to a violation, plain and simple. That night I thought seriously about my options. Selling the house, restricting access, legal steps. None of it felt easy, but for the first time I stopped asking myself what would make everyone else comfortable. I asked myself what would make me feel safe. When my parents finally reached out again, it wasn't with an apology. It was with frustration, with disappointment, with the unspoken expectation that I would eventually get over it. That's when I knew I had to make a decision, not out of anger, out of self-respect. I typed a message carefully, choosing my words with intention. I told them I loved them, but I needed clear boundaries going forward. That they no longer had access to the vacation home. That any future decisions about my life or property would require my consent, no exceptions. Their response was immediate. Anger, accusations, emotional appeals, but something surprising happened. I didn't feel shaken. For the first time I felt steady, because I finally understood that protecting myself didn't make me a bad daughter. It made me an adult. Time did what nothing else could, it softened the sharpest edges without erasing the truth. Weeks passed, then months. The noise from relatives faded. The group chats went quiet. Life slowly settled into a new rhythm, one that felt unfamiliar at first but honest. The vacation house remained unchanged from the moment I last saw it. I didn't rush back. I didn't try to fix or undo anything right away. I needed distance, not just from my parents, but from the version of myself that had allowed silence to replace boundaries for so long. Eventually, I went back alone. No announcements, no explanations, just me and the house. It still didn't feel the same. Maybe it never would, but as I walked through it this time, I wasn't searching for what had been lost. I was deciding what came next. I rearranged small things, removed what I didn't like, kept what I could live with. It wasn't about restoring the past, it was about reclaiming ownership emotionally and mentally. That mattered. My relationship with my parents changed too. We spoke again carefully, less often with clearer limits. They never fully admitted they were wrong and I stopped waiting for them to. Acceptance, I learned, doesn't always come with apologies. Sometimes it comes with distance and adjusted expectations. Christmas came around again the following year. It was quieter, smaller. No grand party. No forced smiles. Just a simple evening, a few conversations, and a sense of calm I hadn't felt before. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. I thought back to that first Christmas party, the laughter, the lights, the whisper that changed everything. What felt like betrayal back then became a turning point. A painful one, yes, but also necessary. Because that moment taught me something I should have learned earlier. Love doesn't mean control. Family doesn't mean ownership. And silence is not the same as peace. Sometimes, standing up for yourself costs comfort. It costs approval. It costs the version of relationships you thought you had. But what you gain is far more valuable. You gain clarity. You gain autonomy. You gain yourself. And if I had to overhear the truth at a Christmas party to learn that lesson, then maybe that whisper wasn't the end of something. Maybe it was the beginning.